welcome everybody. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time out of your days to come to Trent, and we're so pleased to welcome you here at Trent in person. It's so exciting to be back together and just to have this experience. I teach in this building, and just upstairs, just above this room, actually, I always request the special room. I have to fight for it to make sure, because scheduling, because you can look at it and you can see the river, and like, how special is this that we have this here at Trent. So yeah, I just want to welcome you in, and welcome also to the team from Canada HomeShare, who you're going to meet and hear from. They're here from different parts, so from Toronto area, etc. So to have them here, and we were able to host them at the Center for Aging for lunch, and that was just a really exciting thing. So I'm Dr. Elizabeth Russell, and I'm the director of the Trent Center for Aging and Society. And next slide, please, Jackie. So here's a little description of what we are. We gather faculty, students, staff, and community members like yourselves to build meaningful dialogue that challenges entrenched idea about aging and older age. So we really want to show a balanced perspective on aging, and we do this through all sorts of different ways. So just a few photos. I know it's a little hard to see in here even with the blinds shut, but we have really great social events for our members. We support, here is pictured, we support our students. We have a lot of students here at Trent University who are interested in doing research on aging, who care about making a difference through all sorts of different academic backgrounds, actually, beyond just sort of the obvious ones like nursing, etc. We have students in psychology, sociology, the arts and humanities, and almost every field that want to study aging and have that as a foundation for their career. So we really are here to support our students. And a couple of years ago in 2019, we hosted a conference. These are just some shots to show you this building. So 2019, pre-pandemic, was just alive with people, and it was just a great opportunity to learn about aging. And this is a great shot of myself and Raza, who you're going to hear from 3 years ago. Just over 3 years ago, we had a conversation about HomeShare in general. He's going to share about that and what this meant in general. And it's just so exciting 3 years later for us to be here together in this room and to be making this a reality. Another thing, and I sort of mentioned, is graduate and undergraduate teaching and mentorship. So yes, we have courses that focus on aging here, but we also support our students in many ways. So we're finding really creative ways to bring older adults into the classrooms here at Trent. So not just talking about aging, but actually intergenerational activities that connect students and older people in many different ways. Here's an example of one of our classes talking about old age and growing older, and we also have really great events for students and community building activities. So being a part of TCAS is just a really special thing that I'm grateful to be able to share with other people. We also are a research center first and foremost, so really stellar cutting-edge university level research. So we have international research partnerships. So here's the obligatory Zoom screenshot from the last little bit of time. We were just formalizing a partnership with the University of Graz, Austria, in their Center for Interdisciplinary Research on Aging and Care. So that's another area that we're really focused on, is building our international research relationships. And we support the community in Peterborough. So here, for just as one example, we've been very involved in the Alzheimer's Society walk. So some of these pictures are a little bit older. And then this one is just from Adebayo, you're pictured here, just a few weeks ago. So we're always in the community working with different organizations and finding ways to support those that are involved in any way with aging. And then you may have heard in the news, we have a huge project underway where this is like the foundation, I think, of many of our careers, is we're building a long-term care home and university integrated seniors village on Trent campus. So this is current. This is just a screenshot from Google, but that is the current status. But there's been community consultations, and that's currently underway. The applications have been approved, and it's currently with the province and the city of Peterborough at this time. If you're curious about this, it's at the corner of Woodland and Water Street. So this is the Lakefield Road here. And this is the back entrance to Trent, and this is going to be the site of the long-term care home and seniors village. So that's a really exciting project. There's so much opportunity for connecting students and older people in so many meaningful ways, and also just supporting our community, which is what we're here to do. So that's a huge project. And just in general, convocation, we just finished. You might have seen various clips on our social media, on Trent University's social media. Last week was Convocation, which was so great at Trent. We have that platform, if you're familiar with, just above the library. You can see the bridge. It's just a beautiful space. So we just had Convocation week. If you have any questions about TCAS in general, and we'll get to the HomeShare thing, which is I know what you're here to hear about. We have a website, trentu.ca/aging, and we are very active on social media as well. So for every single one of those, just type in Trent Aging, you'll find us, or just send us an email, give us a call. You have our contact information if you made it to this room. So just really happy as just one of the many initiatives that we're involved in to be launching Canada HomeShare Peterborough. So I'll turn it over to Raza. Oh, the last thing, sorry. I do want to say this is an initiative that, big picture, we have representation from our community. So it's not just Trent, it's not just Canada HomeShare, it's all of these organizations that you see pictured. So we have Catherine here from Community Care Peterborough here, and Catherine's been fantastic about sharing with her networks, and some of you may have heard through Catherine. We have representation from Age Friendly Peterborough and the City of Peterborough. Jane's not here today, but really great to have the city. That's critical, I think, as a partner. Karen is here from Fleming College, representing especially off-campus housing. And we also have Nicole from Trent Off-Campus Housing as well. Yeah, so just to show you how many of us have been involved in sort of bringing this program to life. So now I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very, very much. This is the second time I've been here, and I can tell you that both times I got lost, and there's people who can confirm that for you. I did make my way to this great place, and I really want to I just want to really express my sincere thanks to Dr. Russell and everyone else for inviting us here and for giving us this opportunity to talk to you about this initiative that we've been working on, which is the Canada HomeShare program. There's about 10%, so 1 in 10 older adults is actually being abused right now or is in an abusive situation. And so I think about my grandfather when I think about programs like this one, okay? Because it was a matter of $400 or $500 to keep him in his home. He needed a little bit of support and a little bit of adjustment. So that's the framing of that. And I think that when I start to think about it, next slide, please. When I think about what he was trying to tell me, what he was trying to tell me was that he wasn't feeling like he belonged anymore. He didn't feel recognized. He didn't feel valued where he was. And so we think about that in the context of things like social exclusion. So when somebody doesn't feel like they belong to a community or to a setting, they start to feel excluded. And what this slide here is going to tell you is that a person like my grandfather or others who are feeling socially excluded are going to say things like, well, you know, I'm feeling depressed. It's a gendered issue, so women are more likely to say this. So when a person is feeling socially excluded, they're at greater risk for things like elder abuse, greater risk for financial insecurity, they're at greater risk for things like social isolation. And a lot of this exclusion actually comes from ageism. So the ageism that is, you know, really inherent in our society still really helps to foster this feeling of exclusion that an older adult might have. And so we want to address that in a very sort of proactive and intergenerational way. One of the ways to address ageism is to bring older adults and younger individuals together. One of the things that I can tell you is that students in my own class, in my undergraduate class, when I ask them questions like, when was the last time you interacted with an older adult? They'll say, I can't remember. Maybe 6 months ago, a year ago. I don't really interact with older adults. I don't have anything in common with older adults, right? So there's all of these inherent sort of issues that we have to address. And what the headlines also signal is that there is this intergenerational tension around scarce resources. So when we're starting to think about, you know, why people start to feel excluded in their communities, well, the headlines are telling you that the baby boomers are breaking Canada's real estate market. They're telling you things that the younger individuals can't get into the housing market because older adults won't let go of their homes. And the question that I ask is, well, why do older adults have to let go of their homes? My 67-year-old mother doesn't want to move out of her home. She has no plans of moving out of her home. She's earned the right to live in that home. But headlines like this one actually suggest otherwise, that there's a space and a place where young people should be, and there's a space and a place where older adults should be. And so I think this generational tension in one very small way might be bridged through a program like home sharing. And so that's what I'd like to highlight to you today. And I can tell you that this issue around scarce resources isn't just about older adults who are sometimes unable to live in their homes because it's becoming more expensive. You can see the plight of younger individuals as well. You know, there's a landlord who's trying to rent out 3 bedrooms for $420 each. So there's an issue around affordability and attainability for homes that I think is a problem that I'm going to try to frame in the next few slides. So that's the worst of it, okay? The sad story and these headlines, and then I'll tell you a little bit more. And most of you, I'm sure, can relate to this state, but over 92% of the older adults who live in their homes right now, just like my mother, just like my grandfather, they want to stay in their homes. They want to be able to stay in their homes, and they want to be able to age in place, and they want to live there as long as possible. But what does that actually look like? Because it's a very positive thing, but what does that actually look like? Well, home maintenance costs are going up. It's harder for older adults to manage some of the things that they used to do in their home. Seasonal maintenance and other aspects become a little bit more challenging. If people have a mobility issue, et cetera, some of these things become a little bit more challenging. So what I'm going to suggest also is that we have to move away from this conversation about aging in place to saying, how do we help people thrive in place? We want people to really thrive and be able to live in their homes and not be stuck in place, is how often people are feeling. Next slide, please. And so one of the examples I'll use is the City of Toronto. And the City of Toronto has done a bunch of work to pre-plan what it looks like in the next 30 years. And one of the things that I'll highlight for you is that the number of older adults is going to grow. Okay? The fastest growing demographic within the older adult population, 65 plus, is actually the group that is 85 years and older. And all of those individuals would like to stay in their homes and in their communities because that's what they have chosen for themselves. So the other piece here that really what I want to highlight to you is a lot of those people who are living in their homes are actually considered low income. They're actually earning between $15,000 and $25,000. In the City of Toronto, as I'll show you on another slide, a 1-bedroom, 1-bath is $2,000 a month to rent. Okay? So if you look at the income here, $15,000 to $25,000, you can see that there's financial insecurity for that older adult. The other issue is that a lot of these individuals are living alone, just like my grandfather was. And it's a gendered issue. Okay? And if you're interested in these slides, I'm happy to share them with you afterwards. But here's the opportunity. 2/3 of these individuals, low income, older women, and others, actually own their home. Okay? And in those homes, in the City of Toronto alone, based on results from a few years ago, there's 2 million empty bedrooms. And that is actually where we saw the opportunity, and the same one that I reflected on with regards to my grandfather. Is there an opportunity for us to use those 2 million empty bedrooms to address things like social isolation, the lack of companionship, the person feeling excluded and potentially feeling the need to move out of their home? And so this was the starting point of us to have this conversation. Next slide, please. And this conversation started in 2018, just a year before I was here at Trent. And this conversation is actually from the Toronto Senior Strategy. And the Toronto Senior Strategy, a group of older adults, stakeholders in the community, got together and said, we would like to put forward some recommendations to help address the issues older adults are facing in our community. One of their recommendations, number 11, was to bring a HomeShare program to the City of Toronto. That is the only guidance that we got. They said we would like it to be intergenerational, we would like to address ageism, we'd like to address social isolation, we'd like it to address elder abuse, and we would like financial security to be built into that. And we want this to be part of a program that's going to help aging in place in the community. Next slide, please. So, it's okay. We got a bit of pushback from people. People said a home share program, that's not going to solve the housing affordability issues. That's not going to address the housing crisis in any ways. You know, but what we started to again talk about is some of these statistics. Very low vacancy rate. People want to stay in their homes as long as possible. Sometimes they're doing that at the expense of other things. They're not taking their medications. They're not going out to see their friends because they can't afford to. Okay? They're not going out to eat. They're not going to the movies. So they're starting to make financial decisions that sometimes lead to them feeling excluded. Okay, so these are some of the things that we had talked about when we were building this program. Now, when we think about housing affordability, oftentimes we're thinking about people getting into the housing market. When we think about housing affordability in the context of aging in place, it's about keeping people in their homes and allowing them to have enough money to, again, thrive in place. So these were some of the considerations that we put into this home sharing program. So here, there's a couple boring slides here, and this is one of them. So in this one, I'm going to tell you that we did this very academic sort of exercise. We went and we studied lots of different models of home sharing across the world, because the question at the back of our minds was, well, why aren't people just doing this on their own? Why don't people, if they have 2 million empty bedrooms and they need a little bit of money, why aren't they doing it on their own? And what the results from this scoping review said is, well, people don't feel comfortable doing it on their own. They actually don't know if the person that's going to come into their home is going to be more problematic for them and whether it's worth it or not. So that's number one. People said, well, we don't want it just to be a financial transaction. We want it to be a little bit more than that. We would like there to be a relationship building part of it that's really important. And I think the next part, what they said was, we'd like someone to help us do it. We would really like it to be something that is supported and that we feel a little bit more connected to something bigger. So this is what we learned when we actually studied about 1,400 different models of home sharing and results from all across the world. Next slide, please. And some of the things that we learned as a result of the first pilot that we ran in Toronto back in 2018, we made 10 matches between older adults and students, post-secondary, university, college students, and older adults from the community. And from those matches, what we learned is that, well, the program needs to be completely facilitated by a social worker. So you see my colleagues here today, Jackie and Caitlin. They're social workers. They take the guesswork out of, there's Jackie right there, I think people are looking at you. They take all of the guesswork out of who's a good match and what's not a good match, and if the home is suitable for home sharing or not. And so what that looks like is, well, we have a full application system where you submit an application, the application is reviewed by our social work team, and they're going to tell you details about all this stuff in the next few slides. And they determine whether it's going to be a good match for you based on a number of qualities and characteristics there. They also go into your home and they make sure that it's accessible and safe. But the other part I think that's really important is the accountability piece. That there's someone there who's going to be accountable for the program and for your match and for your home share agreement, who you can reach at most times of the day, including after hours. People like Jackie are there to answer the call. So if people were to do this on their own, it wouldn't look the same way. Okay, so this is a facilitated model. Now, the other piece about this is in this model, because remember, people said we don't just want this to be a financial transaction. It's not. Students pay between $400 and $600 a month to stay in the home of an older adult, 55 plus, and what they do is they support the older adult in very meaningful ways that they agree on. So maybe that requires grocery shopping, or maybe that requires eating a meal together. It's an agreement that is worked out between the student, the older adult, and our social work team to say, in exchange for this subsidized rent, we'd like you to contribute to the home for 5 to 7 hours. Okay, so that's what that facilitated model looks like. Now here's some of the results when we asked people, and this again was something that people really complained about with the program. We asked them 167 questions. And they were like, this took me 49 minutes to fill out this survey. This is the longest survey we ever filled out. And I said, well, we need the information because we actually haven't really studied home share programs. And this one's very specific. But what did people say when we asked them, what is the benefit of a home share program? They said, well, I feel a little bit more light in my life. I feel a little bit more happy in the morning, something with more purpose for me. I feel like my quality of life has improved. They weren't shy about saying things like, well, you know what? I have a little bit more financial security. Because for that older adult who is getting $600 additional income, that's $7,200. And for that student who is saving between $1,500 to $1,800 in rent, that's a lot more savings for them to do other things that they would want to do. I think the other piece here is that being able to access resources and participate in programs, especially being connected to the larger home share network, I think that was a real benefit for people. But here's some key questions here. Go ahead, next slide. Activities associated with intergenerational programs may prevent or address social isolation. Most people said yes. And if we think back to this idea about elder abuse and this notion that people are feeling more and more isolated and lonely, and I had this conversation earlier this morning as well, between 10 and 15% of older adults who are actually in retirement living or in long-term care are there not because they have complex healthcare needs, it's actually because their social and emotional needs are not being met in the community. And I still have a hard time wrapping my head around that. Is how are we not meeting people's social and emotional needs better in the community? And so programs like this one really motivate me to focus on those needs as well. Next slide, please. Can you go back one more? People's delay the need to move out of a community. Could a HomeShare program delay the need for people to move out of a community? Most people, again, here agreed or strongly agreed that a program like this could allow them to stay in their home and community a little bit longer. Next slide, please. And then this is the kind of information that I think policymakers are interested in when they say, well, is this a housing issue? Is this an income issue? What is this really about? And the way that I answer this question is I say, if I can keep an older adult who may have no one to call when they're in an emergency or they're in a state of distress, because social exclusion also sometimes means that you don't have meaningful relationships with people that you can call during good times or bad times, and they call and they're going to the hospital, that's $842 a day. If they end up in a long-term care home, because again, social, emotional needs potentially are not being met, or their health is declining because they're not engaging in the ways that they'd like to, et cetera, that's $126. And these are discounted rates because these statistics are from a few years ago. If someone starts to need home care, $42 a day. A program like this one, if we're proactive and we say we'd like to help people before they need all of those things, or if we can delay all of those things, it costs you 54 cents a day. The whole program to onboard one person costs $197.10. So per student, per older adult, it's just under $400. And you would get that same cost with one hospital visit, or half a day of a hospital visit. So that's what I'd like to highlight. And then just as a timeline, we started in Toronto in 2018. We were a fully funded program by the City of Toronto in 2019. And then thanks to lots of interest from across the country, including places like Peterborough, Toronto HomeShare became Canada HomeShare. And by saying that, I'm telling you that it's now a pan-Canadian network of HomeShare communities that we're building, including this one that we're very excited about here in Peterborough. And so we have live sites, and we'll move on to the next slide, and we're going to talk about this. Toronto, Barrie, Metro Vancouver, Kingston, Peel Region, Peterborough, Oshawa. And so this again highlights to you a couple of things. There's lots of interest in this program, but that also highlights to you that there's a lot of need that's being unmet. And so we hope to meet some of those needs in very, again, meaningful ways to allow people to be able to age in place in their homes and communities just the way that they want to. And so just before I hand it off to my colleague Caitlin, I'm going to just ask Jackie to share this video. And we started to think about, well, HomeShare has been this very popular option to the point where there was a full TV show about it. Why aren't we doing it more? And we'll talk a little bit more about how we are doing it again. Thank you so much.
You girls shouldn't sit out here in the sun.
Reg, we've been so worried about you.
I know.
Oh, I'm so glad you're out.
I'm sorry if I worried you.
Oh, sweetheart, how are you?
I'm okay. I really am. No, at first I wanted to give up, to die, truly. Only time I ever felt worse was when George died. But then I had the kids with me, and I pulled through it. This time I thought, well, this is my last chance. This is my last hope for happiness. I just thought I'd never feel good again.
How long is this story? I'm 80. I have to plan.
Then this morning I woke up and I was in the shower shampooing my hair and I heard humming. Well, I thought there was someone in there with me. No, it was me. I was humming. And humming means I'm feeling good. And then I realized I was feeling good because of you. You made the difference. You're my family. And you make me happy to be alive.
Let's all drive to Coconut Grove for lunch.
Okay.
My treat. We'll have to celebrate. What, that she came out of her room? That we're together.
And that no matter what happens, even if we all get married, we'll stick together.
We'll need a much bigger house.
Sure, Rose. After lunch, you can pick up the lumber.
Thank you so much, Raza. My name is Caitlin Olson, and I'm the Peterborough Coordinator and Social Worker for Canada HomeShare. And I'm very excited to be here today. I've had the pleasure of working on other sites in Canada HomeShare, and I'm very excited about the implementation here in Peterborough. As the Peterborough coordinator and social worker, my role is more in the day-to-day activities of the program. And so I have the pleasure of meeting all of the applicants, facilitating matches, and ensuring the success of those matches through continued involvement throughout. And I'd love to get into a little bit more detail about the Canada HomeShare process and what it would look like if you were to join the program. So our application process starts online, and if that's not something that you're comfortable with, please call us, and I will answer the phone or call you back, and I would be able to support with that process if there are any challenges in that area. But our application is on our website. Once you apply, you would get an email, and that email is going to ask you to book an interview with me, and that's a 45-minute interview. And really, I don't like that word, it's a meeting. I really just want to get to know you. I want to get to know why you're interested in joining the program, what your hopes are for the program, what your preferences are, things like that. And so we meet. Likewise, if you're a student, I would do the same. I would have a 45-minute meeting together, same idea. For home providers, the next step is that I would come to your home. Raza briefly mentioned that. I would come to your home and we would meet in person and chat a little bit more. I'd get to see the space that you're offering the student and also do some safety checks like Raza mentioned, just smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, that kind of boring stuff. After that, all of our students and our home providers complete a vulnerable sector screening police check. And so that's done through the Peterborough Police. The application is online, and again, if any assistance is needed, I'm more than happy to help with that. But yes, for the safety of all the participants, students and home providers do complete the vulnerable sector check. At that point, you enter the matching pool, and what that looks like is I'm just waiting for the perfect student or home provider, if you're a student, to come up and to make that perfect match that Raz is talking about. I'm gonna get into a little bit more detail about that process and that thought process that goes on in terms of making a great match. But it can be a waiting game. We say that it takes a minimum of 2 months to make a match because we really want it to be right for you. And so not every student applicant that comes in is gonna be the right fit. We're gonna wait until we find a person who I think might be a really nice fit for you. And then the ball's in your court. I would speak to you. We'd have a conversation. I'd give you a little bit of preliminary detail about that student or home provider. And you'd let me know if you'd like to meet them. And that initial meeting would, again, be a virtual thing. Just with COVID, we're trying to reduce the in-person interaction. So it would be myself, yourself, and the student or home provider, depending on who you are. And we'd meet and just get to know each other a little bit. So if that goes really well and everybody's interested in moving forward, we would do an in-person meeting with the student, home provider, and myself, where the student's able to see the home, again, the space that's being offered, that type of thing. And it's really just a chance. I mean, meeting virtually is great and it's convenient, but it's just not the same as meeting in person. So that in-person meeting is very important for getting to know each other and ensuring that it feels right and that it feels like the right match for you. At that point, we would look at creating the HomeShare agreement. And those are kind of the final steps as the match is being finalized. So the HomeShare agreement, I'm gonna get into a little bit more detail, but it really, too soon. I'll talk about it in a little bit, but it serves as the basis. It's like a contract in a way, just talking about the amount of rent to be paid each month, how it's going to be sent to you. It is sent directly to the home provider from the student. And the tasks, the very detailed breakdown of the tasks that are to be completed each week. As Raza mentioned, the student's responsible for 5 to 7 hours a week of support around the home. And we would set a move-in date. That's the best part. It's very exciting. We get to a point where we set the move-in date, and from there, I would continue to stay involved. As I mentioned, it's a social work facilitated program, so I don't leave at that point. I'm still there, and I would check in on the move-in date, how did things go, and I would continue to check in monthly throughout the duration of the match. Next slide, please. So how do we get to know you on the application? This is a super important part because it serves as the basis of the information that I use for making a really good match. So it is detailed. definitely doesn't take forever to fill out, but it asks you lots of different preferences. Any allergies or sensitivities, interests, activities, and hobbies that you enjoy, the space that you're offering, anything about physical or emotional health that would be important for us to know. And these are for students and home providers. Both are asked similar questions on the applications. How long would you like the HomeShare arrangement to last? So it's an average of 8 months, but it's flexible and it's something that we want to work together to decide. What types of assistance would you like help with? And vice versa for the student, what types of assistance would you most like to help with or offer? What do you hope to gain from the HomeShare experience? I want to match in those areas. Other little tidbits, which sound not so important, but they really are. House policies, preferences, visitor policies. Are you comfortable with the student having guests in your home? That's a common question we get asked, and that's really up to you and the student. And other preferences like smoking, vaping, alcohol use in the home. It's a student that we ask, both the home provider and the student as well. A question, sorry. Next slide. So what is the HomeShare agreement? Like I mentioned, I wanted to go into a bit more detail about that. So because there's an exchange of the subsidized rent that the student's paying for the assistance that they're going to give, this agreement does not fall under the Landlord and Tenant Act. So we create our own agreement called the HomeShare Agreement, which I facilitate. We all do together, the student, home provider, and it's a collaborative effort with myself too. And as I mentioned, it talks about really important things like how much rent is to be paid each month. How is it going to be paid? Check, e-transfer, that kind of thing. And as I mentioned, it is the money is sent directly from the student to the home provider. We're not involved in that aspect, although we do check in to make sure that it is paid. What else? Move-in date, length of HomeShare agreement, like length of the match. And we go into detail about the tasks that are to be completed each week. And we find that's really important. There's no ambiguity, no, less room for confusion, things like that. Once you move in, we want it to be smooth sailing and easy from there. So that's what the HomeShare agreement's about. Other things that we cover are spaces that the student has access to in the home, spaces that you may prefer them not to have access to, guest policies, expectations about the relationship, and also in this day and age, a COVID-19 plan. So if anybody were to contract COVID-19, what does that look like? What is the isolation protocol in that specific circumstance? So that kind of covers the HomeShare agreement. It is a detailed document. It's an important one, and both the home provider and the student sign off on it before the move-in occurs. So a common question we get asked is, what might Canada HomeShare students help with? And it's very self-directed, but common things that they help with are light household tasks. Maybe sometimes you do your own cleaning or have somebody to come in, but you need or would like a little bit of extra support with that. A student can help with that. Light errands and shopping, light household chores, or not household chores, like outdoor chores, like help assisting with snow maintenance. Sometimes maybe cutting the grass if that's required or desired. Meal prep, technical assistance, and of course companionship. And that can range from maybe not wanting that much companionship, maybe it's just some informal conversation in passing, to something a little more formal, like maybe playing cards once a week, watching a show once a week. Jackie will give some examples, but we have home providers and students who like to go to the museum together. It can really look different for everybody, and that's the beauty of matches with Canada HomeShare. They're very individualized. There are some limitations to what students can do. So they're not able to replace a caregiver in any capacity, provide surveillance, administer medication, or even give simple medication reminders. any form of hands-on care, so transferring to and from a wheelchair, and that's for the safety of the home provider and the student because they're not trained to be able to support with any of those tasks. Also, I will say that home providers need to be able to move through all of these processes independently, save for the technology aspects that I talked about earlier. That's just because we want to make sure we have the full consent of the home provider, the full participation of the home provider, and so that they can get the full safety as well, and so that they can get the full advantage of the program and that relationship with the student. Next slide. So that's a little bit about the process and what it looks like to be involved in the program. I think if anybody has any questions now, I'm happy to take them. If anybody has any questions at the very end, I'm also happy to wait. We do have a video, and I think it really highlights and brings to life the things that Raza, myself, and Elizabeth have been talking about. It features a home share match between Dorothy and Elizabeth, and they're a shining example of what a match can look like, and I'd love to share that. When people are asking, like, oh, where are you living? Like, oh, I'm living with my roommate. Oh, what does your roommate do? Oh, she's almost 80. Everyone's always very jealous.
At the beginning, I used to go to her door to knock. That's kind of silly. So now we text.
Text.
Whatever I want, when I want it. It's very sweet. It's very,
no problem. That's what I'm here for. Hi, my name is Maggie. I'm a student with the Toronto HomeShare program, and I've been matched with Dorothy.
No, I found it.
Oh, okay. These ones look okay.
Hi, my name is Dorothy, and I am a client or an elder in the Toronto HomeShare program.
Oh, I love this mug.
I found it in the newspaper, and I only get the paper once a week. And there it was. I was really looking for somebody else to be in the house. My husband passed away a number of years ago. And, you know, many people, well, I should move. Well, where am I going to move to? Because I really love my house. The student does 7 hours of light housekeeping a week. That's what they're committed to. The one that's most important for me is the computer. Computer and garbage. So often, Maggie has sat with me to show me how to do something. She's a genius.
So if you wanted to have two screens going at the same time, I wasn't really sure how I was going to be of help to Dorothy. Meeting her, even for the first time, I could tell she was incredibly independent. I feel like in our case, it feels more just like we're roommates and not like I'm supporting someone. I think that it's really nice to just be in the house, and if anything were to happen, it's nice to just have someone else there. You know where I live?
So that was one of Jackie's matches. I'm going to pass it off to Jackie really quickly, and I'll be around here for questions afterwards.
Thanks. I'm going to use my yelly voice. So I apologize about the slide deck. I'm so sorry. It's probably hard to see at the back with the white background. It looks amazing on a computer screen. But I'm going to tell you about what it's like to be matched in Canada HomeShare. If you're wondering what it would be like, that was one of the matches from Toronto. So I've been a social worker in the program since back in 2019. And these are some testimonials from some of my matches. So I had matches living together during COVID, which is an interesting thing to have lived through. The first testimonial, I had a match. The student actually lived in a basement apartment, so the home provider and the student had this arrangement where once a week they would play cards together and they would have coffee. COVID happened, and of course we had to social distance, so it was coffee on the stairs. So the home provider would sit at the top of the stairs on a chair, and the student would sit at the bottom, and the student taught the home provider how to play bridge online. And they played their card games online, and they lived together through 8 months of the pandemic, and they did just beautifully. The second one, so I went to do a home visit, and it was in the summertime, and there was this huge garden in the backyard, and it was empty. And the home provider had some pots on the deck, and I was asking, and she said, I moved into this house because of that garden. I love that garden, but carrying the bags of soil and just taking care of all of it was just too much. So I matched her with a student who'd grown up in an apartment, had never had a backyard before, and she didn't know how to garden, but she was really interested in learning. And so I matched them in the fall. Over the winter, they
read gardening magazines and watched videos, and they decided what they were going to plant. They had a drawing that they sent me, and then spring they planted the garden. And it was really lovely. She sent me an email saying I got my favorite part of my home back, which was just so lovely. The last one also in COVID. So I had a home provider who lost her spouse 6 months before applying, talked about how cooking for one was just not very interesting to her. I cook for one as well. I agree it's not that interesting. So I matched her with a student who didn't know how to cook and wanted to learn. And so they watched videos and cooking shows together, and they learned sort of together how to make all of these things that neither one of them had ever had before. So a HomeShare agreement a HomeShare match can really look any way that you want it to. And Caitlin will be there to make sure that it looks the way that looks good to you. Was all I wanted to say. Next slide. So these are some of the questions I get asked, so I thought I would just put them out front before we open it up to questions. Do I have to prepare meals for my student? Absolutely not. The students are supposed to take care of themselves. They are expected to purchase their own groceries and cook their own meals. If sharing a meal or meal prep is part of it, that's fine, but in no way is there a caregiving aspect from home provider to student. How long do matches last? I know Caitlin went in a little bit on that, but generally 4 to 8 months or a school year. I've had matches on my caseload for about 3 years in Toronto, still living together, still renewing their HomeShare agreements, but generally a school year. I think I might like to participate, but I'm not really sure. That is completely common. I think the website has another info session video, CanadaHomeshare.com. It's got a lot of frequently asked questions, and if you really want more information, you just call Caitlin, or you call me, and then I will answer your questions if there's more, because I know sharing your home is it's very important to being comfortable in your own home, and I think there's a lot of hesitation that comes with inviting somebody in, and that's completely normal, and we're here to help. Is Canada HomeShare just for single older adults, or can couples apply? Couples can absolutely apply, or if you've got an adult child living at home, no problem. Welcome to apply. And what do you do to make sure your participants are safe? So first, everybody gets screened by Caitlin in a screening interview, a vulnerable sector police background check, an in-person meeting, a matching meeting with the social worker in attendance virtually, and then another matching meeting, and we're case managing from there on. So Caitlin's available in the day from 7 to 9 p.m. There's an on-call phone. It's me at the other end. So if you have any problems, I'll be there. And that's what we do. Next.
There's a few.
You screen the students very thoroughly. How thorough do you screen the senior?
We screen you the same way as the student. So every screening the student does, the older adult home providers go through the same type of screening process. The only difference is we screen the homes as well as the home provider. So we do the virtual interview, we do the vulnerable sector background check. The home providers also do that, but with the home providers, we also make sure the home is safe. So everybody's getting screened the same way.
And how many rejects have you had on both sides?
I would say that not everybody who applies is necessarily eligible. Some people will apply and then say, I don't really want to share my home. I was just thinking about it. I'm not ready yet. I'm not quite sure yet. So I probably wouldn't match a student if you're not really interested. But yeah, I would say most of the people that apply can make it through the screening process. Location is kind of, so if you don't live in a HomeShare city, we get applicants from using maybe a Peterborough application, but they live in Sunderland, Ontario.
One other question. Did it originate in Toronto, HomeShare?
Yeah, so we started it as Toronto HomeShare back in 2018. We did a pilot. I started working there. At the end of that pilot, we got money to become a full program in Toronto in 2019, and then in 2020 we got our expansion money, and then we launched the pilots. But we're still active in Toronto.
Not an international association then,
no, not us.
Not yet.
Not yet. Sorry, not yet.
National, but not international.
Yeah, so we're in right now. We're in Alberta, British Columbia, and Fredericton. Fredericton.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're in more than one province, just all in Canada. Hi.
I don't know if you're going to cover this later. What's the tax
Right.
concerns.
Yeah.
So we do recommend that the tax implications from the money that you receive, and this is a great question to have Raza Mirza standing here for, because we recommend that you speak to the person who does your taxes, because the students do need to have access to a rent receipt, but it is below market rent. So that makes a difference. I haven't had a home provider that had negative implications from taking the rental money, but we recommend you speak to the person who does your income tax.
So it's taxable income.
It is, yes. Because the students
How
need
you
to,
handle it is up to you.
but the students need to have a receipt for their income tax.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you've got to claim it.
Question about the care needs, right? So actually I do similar work to this, but we connect people that can share care, right, to drive the cost of their care down.
Yeah.
So first question is, do you screen a lot of people out because they're looking for someone that can do care for them in their house?
Yeah, so we do get people who do apply in the hopes that a student would be able to assist with that care. And so we have had applicants who do require help with transfers from wheelchair or just any other types of care, medication, reminders, things like that. And unfortunately, students are not able to provide that. They're not trained in it, and it just wouldn't be safe. So
I would say a workaround that we've found for that is, so we get a lot of requests like, my mom lives alone, she's got a cognitive impairment, we're there all the time, it would be so nice if someone just was there at night to keep an eye on her. And so instead of matching with the mom, I've matched with the adult child, because having someone to take out your garbage and help clean helps adult caregivers, but we can't have the student responsible for the surveillance. But absolutely, I've matched that as a workaround.
Then what happens in the middle of this relationship if the host is hospitalized or has to be outside of their own home and maybe not return, like go to long-term care? Or...
Yeah. So I've had that a couple of times, and we were able to rematch with another home provider.
But since it's not the Residential Tenancies Act, like you're able to get a student out of there quicker.
We ask for 60 days notice in the program, but when it comes right down to it, the program will take responsibility for safely rehoming that student if an emergency happens. Yeah. I think she was, and then, is that okay?
How are you funded?
We're grant funded. So we're a nonprofit and we're funded by a grant.
Oh, so the people that want this service do not have to pay?
There's no cost to HomeShare at all. No. Yes.
Does Trent ever direct any of its students to HomeShare?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, we're just in the sorry, I was holding it there so it could pick you up. Yeah, absolutely. So at our different HomeShare sites, we work closely with the different schools in the area. And so we have the pleasure of working with Elizabeth at Trent and Nicole, who's here from Trent Off-Campus Housing, as well as Karen, who's here from Fleming Off-Campus Housing. And so they're able to reach the student body and let them know about our program. And I would say typically we might even have more student applicants than home providers, because students are always actively looking for housing options.
And students who will be coming into Trent from another location, you would have to coordinate a visit for the process.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So that in-person component is really important for making sure that it's going to be a good fit. And so, yeah.
I would also add, though we're partnered with Trent, we welcome any student.
Yeah.
So if you're going to a private college to be a nail technician, welcome to apply to the program, just as long as it's a career course set somewhere. I'll just do here, and then, is that okay? Hi.
Have you found since 2018, since you started, has it been relatively positive in all of the cases that you've dealt with?
I would absolutely say that. Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. We're very careful and intentional in the way we match. So if I can't make a good match, I won't make a match. So we're not pushing people together. We don't have pressure in terms of quotas. We only make matches we think will be beneficial to both parties.
If I could just add one more quick point to that. Just to
Can you talk louder?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit louder. I was going to just add that, I think one of the other things that I've learned is that people actually haven't thought about their homes to share. But I think once we go out and we talk to people and we say, if you have an empty bedroom, and would you be, open to hosting a student, for example, for 4 to 8 months? I think once they try it out and they talk to the situation with their family and to their friends, I think their experiences have been very positive. And I think the other part that really people have valued is that they feel that they have an element of control over the agreements, and they have this supportive group of individuals who will help them work through all of these issues. If, for example, 4 months down the road, they're like, this isn't for me. And the alternative to that is that there was this one particular home provider, who said, I would like a new student every 4 months because I just love to interact with people and meet new people. So that's also been one of the things. But I would say that since 2018, most of the experiences have been very positive and really getting people to just think about it as a concept with this idea of home sharing. So yeah, thanks for your question.
Two things. First of all, is this open to all students, international and domestic?
Right, so as long as they can do the in-person meeting, so we don't have students from another place come in and directly move into their HomeShare home. We can't do that because they need to do
They'd have to be here first.
They'd have to be here, yeah. So
Okay.
we do accept international students. A lot of times international students will kind of come and apply in their second semester, maybe their second year. Yeah.
Okay, so it is open to them.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And the other question is, what facilities do you expect the home provider to provide?
Right. So do you want me to?
You talk about a bedroom, but you
Yeah,
don't
so-
talk about anything else.
Yeah,
That's a
so
great question.
the students need to be able to use the kitchen and to make their
Oh,
food.
the shared kitchen.
Shared kitchen. Usually the common spaces in the home share agreement it allows, so if there's rooms that are off limits, the student shall never go into those rooms, that's written into the agreement, that's fine. But we usually want it to feel like the student's home as well, so not just from bedroom to out the door. But those things can be talked about with Caitlin, absolutely.
Okay, so you don't have a set.
No.
They have to have a bed, they have to have a dresser, they have to
So
have
also,
a...
if you just have an empty bedroom, that's also fine.
Yeah, it can be unfurnished.
yeah.
Yeah. The core requirements are a bedroom with a door, can be furnished or unfurnished, access to the kitchen, so shared, like you said, and room for their food in a cupboard space and in the fridge, and then access to a bathroom, and that could be private or shared, whatever's on offer.
Okay.
Yeah. And those are the kind of the core requirements.
It gives me an idea what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Whatever house you got, we'll make it work.
And-
We have a student living with us
Oh,
right
that's-
now for the last 3.5 years. So.
Amazing. And you don't have
She
to.
graduated last Monday.
Oh, wow, good for her.
Day leave.
Oh, hence why you're here.
Yes.
Couple of questions. So it's Peterborough HomeShare. 100 yards north of here is the county of Peterborough with 60,000 people. Is it the county people eligible as well? So it's city and county?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So basically, if a student is willing in the Peterborough area, because Peterborough is different than the GTA, we've got an M postal code, and that means eligibility. But here, it's really, will a student find that okay to sort of travel to school? And if yes, county is absolutely in, county and city. Yeah.
Okay. So in the agreement, are the students allowed to drive people to get groceries and stuff like that? That's one of the needs. How's that handled?
Interesting.
One
So
of the things I want you to take me to grocery shop every week because I can't drive
this. Oh, so driving your car.
Either driving your car or the student's car.
Most of the students don't have cars, but Peterborough's different, so we're learning. I think that would
In
be.
the county?
Yeah.
In the county, something in the county, somebody in the county can't drive in.
I would
Needs
say
to go get groceries.
if there was an arrangement with your insurance company and everything was very transparent, there's nothing in the program that says that can't happen. We just need to make sure for liability reasons everybody's safe.
That's
Yeah.
What about, again, residents that need year-round, they have some mobility issues, and they really do need somebody around, year-round to take the garbage out, cut the lawn in the summertime, shovel the driveway in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Do you have students that match up for 12 months at a time?
So sometimes we do. In Toronto, like I said, it's a more established program. Here, right now, we're doing an 8-month match. right? Because in the pilot phase, you don't have that guarantee of continuity, and we don't want to set someone up for a disappointment and putting them in a worse spot. So in the future iterations of this program, I definitely see that like one student would cycle out, another one would come in, so that there is that continuity. But right now, we just can't guarantee that. So for Peterborough, we're looking at 8 months.
Yeah, you have students that home share for like their last 3 years of university?
Yeah, I have he's lovely.
The same student every year?
Yeah, so I have a student who moved in. His mom came with him to the first home visit. He's 18 years old, moving from small town to Toronto, and he's been with his home provider for his whole undergrad. He goes home in the summer, and he comes back in the fall, and they do it all over again.
Now, do they have to pay to keep the space open?
That's up to the home provider, and the home provider said, absolutely not, as long as you come back. So that's some home providers would want that income in the summer, in which case the student can either pay it or I would match a new student. But his home provider, like I said, as the home provider, you're kind of in charge, not me.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
How do you determine if the client or the senior is mentally stable enough to share their home with the student? That's a very thin line to cross, I think.
Yeah, so I would assess it by spending time with them. So the application gives me some information. That home visit where Caitlin goes is about an hour. I can't say that I could assess for everything, but generally I've never had that come up where it was something came up later that I wasn't aware of.
If I could just add that I think the part about having the clinical social work team
That's true.
facilitating the model.
Raza's not wrong.
People sometimes ask and they say, why is the interview 45 minutes to an hour? Why can't it be 15 minutes or 20 minutes or over Zoom? And it's for these exact reasons. So you get to know the person, and that our team can actually do that sort of assessment of cognitive fitness or
yeah. And there is more than one meeting, so that gives the opportunity for continuity, assessing memory and things like that. If we're having conversation and things like that, where if the next time we speak, there are a lot of things that aren't remembered. It's all those kinds of assessment that happens through the two meetings and forward. I think there was a question in the back, and then I think you might have had one as well.
So I'm a student, and I'm thinking that it takes 2 months for a proper match to occur, and I'm already looking for a place for September. So I want to apply, but at the same time, I'm not sure if it's a good fit since it takes so long for me. And I think most students would probably think the same thing since Brent starts in September, right?
Yeah.
School starts in September, so I don't know if I should apply or not.
So I would say Caitlin is there to talk through it.
Yeah.
So up to 2 months means that it's like if everybody's vulnerable, if she has a home provider, vulnerable sector screening's back, home visits done, your vulnerable sector screening comes back. It's not like 2 months is a fixed time. It just can take up to 2 months. So I would talk to Caitlin. Do you have any home providers that I would be eligible to kind of be matched with? It is difficult. I understand that is one of the most difficult parts of the program, I think, is students need to know. Mm-hmm. And in a pilot phase of a program like this, it's not as clear. Raza?
Can you I think the other piece to add about the pilot is that to make good matches, you need a pool of participants on the student side and on the home provider side. So that up to 2 months also includes the fact that we want to make a good match, but we want to make sure it's the right match. It's not one student applies and an older adult applies and it's a match. It may not be a match. So that's why we err on the side of caution and say to people, if you need something immediately, this may not be it. But if you have your vulnerable sector screening done and your application done, you've gone past 50% of the bottlenecks, the things that cause the delays.
So the other thing is he can apply and he can still search for applicants, can't he? And then he puts in your application.
Exactly. Yeah,
The application's free.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Nicole. There's no harm in applying. I try to be very transparent with students. I encourage all students to look at alternate options because we're not always able to guarantee a match with Canada HomeShare, just due to the nature of the program, as Raza said, application numbers, things like that. So, but there's certainly no harm, and I do my best to be very transparent about what's available or not, and you can withdraw your application at any time too if you find something else.
I saw
Yeah.
2 hands over here. Do those
There
hands
were a
still
couple.
wanna go? Are we good?
I think this lady here's been waiting for a bit.
Okay.
If you had a question?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah, please.
It's all right. I've shared my home for about 40 years with different people. It started with refugees, and I have a refugee just moved in today, actually, and I've had a lot of students since I came to Peterborough 4 years ago. The thing that I'm thinking about is I want something, as my health gets worse, I feel that I want somebody in the house who has some sense of responsibility for me. And that's why I'm looking at this. But I also just wanted to say that, you know, those of us who are in control of our lives and our home can find it really hard to be flexible. And so in this partnership that we're talking about, students, if we're talking about students here, generally have to be flexible because often they're sharing with other students or whoever, and so there's this built-in sense that they have to be flexible. But for those of us who are, you know, older and have homes and more control over our lives, you know, and that's difficult. I think mainly I have very few. I don't want to say rules, but I am saying rules, and one of them is no smoking in the house or the garden, and that's the main one. And I am vegetarian, but I don't expect other people not to be vegetarian, for instance, but people really respond to that, you know? And the other thing that a comparison, I have these very few. I have a friend in Toronto who is very successful with sharing her house, who has about 30 questions that she asks. And so those are 2 very different ways of, and she's had great success over many years. So there's a lot of factors like that of flexibility, I think, is the issue that I want to bring in.
I think going in, so for my matches, I go in being like, how are you feeling about this? First question, I don't know, I'm not sure how I feel, and then we go from there. So the home share agreement even gets down to, what do you consider to be a full garbage can? Because I know that like my definition of that and somebody else's might be different. So having conversations about not just flexibility, but what can we do up front to make sure that those boundaries that you have are respected, and without having to have those conversations with the student all the time, they sort of know the way that it goes. But I think the pro-con list is helpful for people who aren't sure. And in areas where there's the smoking would go into the home share agreement. No smoking in the garden, no smoking in the house. There would be no conversations about that. It just goes in there. So I think that agreement being formal, like your friend's doing with the 30 questions, is so important in making it successful in the end. You don't know this person, and it's important that you can cover as much as you can in that agreement.
So it's a question of things like, I'm an environmentalist, if you like, climate action. So some things are very important to me, like usage of energy.
Yeah.
So in the winter you put a sweater on, not the heater up. Those kinds of things.
All those things go in that agreement, yeah.
They're in their agreement, but I sense myself, I have to also to be flexible. If I am rigid, then I will crack.
Yeah, I think I would want you to be able to be rigid with those values that you hold that are very important with that. I think I wouldn't want a student to make you have the heat on when you normally wouldn't. I would match you with a student who shared your values about stuff like that.
And for example, I actually did have a student who said, I'm very used to being in a cold home, so it might make me feel a little uncomfortable to be in a warm home. And so that's something that I'm assessing when I do the visit with the home provider, is what does it feel like? What is the temperature like? So then when I'm trying to make a match, and so say for example, if you were to say my home tends to be a little on the cooler side and I bundle up with clothes, that could work perfectly, right? And then 2 people have said that to me, and that's a...
So that for me, I'll just say this last thing, and I'll quit. But you know, that ability to learn from each other, to experience the other, I think is growing for both sides, both partners in this thing, you know. And that,
I would agree.
So that we as we grow older still are learning and experiencing something different. So I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a...
I would also say that there's like a lid for every pot in home share. So there's a student that has the same things that, like, I get what you're saying, but there's a student that can be matched with pretty much every home provider. There's a matching student. I feel.
And home providers and students are typically, in my experience, are really great with just being respectful of each other and, like you're saying, flexible with each other, and learning from each other in a relationship, in that match relationship. And I think we do see that, and it's very nice. Yeah. There were a couple other questions. You first, and then
to the back.
Okay. Yeah.
The cost for the vulnerable sector check.
We pay. We pay.
It's reimbursed.
You reimburse that for both the student and the
As long as the person applying lives in a HomeShare city, so the home provider is of course going to live in Peterborough, so it would definitely be reimbursed for the home provider. And as long as the student lives in a HomeShare city, like perhaps Peterborough, or maybe they live in Toronto, then we could reimburse it. I think that's right? Yeah.
They'd have to live in one of your
So if it's an international VSS, or if it's a VSS from outside, we don't cover that cost, because the cost of the vulnerable sector screenings is included in our budget. So some places like Metro Vancouver, it's $78. In Toronto, for us, it's $20. So it's just for the city. They can still participate in the program. They just would have to
still apply, but they
absolutely
have to pay their own
exactly.
And often as long as the applicant includes a letter saying that they're applying for the VSS for volunteer purposes, they'll get it at a reduced rate, and we can provide them for that letter. So unfortunately, if they live outside of Peterborough, they would have to cover the cost themselves, but we can provide that letter if there is a lower rate for them.
The vulnerable sector check for volunteer is free.
Oh, in Peterborough, yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Here,
So,
I don't know about anywhere else, but here.
Some
Once it's
Yeah.
not for volunteers, the price can go very high if you
Yeah.
take fingerprints.
Some cities consider our participants volunteers because we just describe the program to the local police person who does the VSSs, and some consider us volunteers and some don't. So that's
I would check with the local police forces. So again, Peterborough County would have to go through the OPP site for screening, and then the Peterborough residents would go through Peterborough.
Through the city, yeah. Okay, yeah.
But it should be no charge.
For volunteers.
Not a profit, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Okay,
To the
wonderful.
back?
I was just wondering if you have a conflict resolution process and what it looks like, and maybe give us an example of how it has worked in the past.
Sure. So I'm also a mediator. So in general, we don't have a lot of conflicts come up that I have to actually go out to. Normally, it's sometimes that we learn things about each other when we move in together that we didn't know. So sometimes it's as simple as this is going on, I wasn't expecting it, and we just amend that home share agreement. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's a facilitated conversation over Zoom. Sometimes it requires no real intervention other than just having a conversation about this is a new experience and I maybe wasn't expecting this and I'm having some feelings, I'd just like to talk about them. But we are there to provide conflict resolution.
What about something like breaking the rules?
Breaking the rules, so
like no smoking in the house.
yeah.
There's
So
smoking in the house.
yeah, so I think that the comforting thing about HomeShare is if something like that happens, they're responsible to the program as well. So it would be me intervening about that.
That's
like,
what I mean.
yeah.
The program would intervene
That's
and
right.
either cancel the agreement or do what was necessary to resolve it.
Exactly.
I think right there. Yeah.
I'm asking this on behalf of a student who's actually in the U.S. right now. And so the question is, in terms of these face-to-face meetings, certainly there's one when a match has been made. Was there a prior one with you, or so just the one, it's not two?
Yeah, for students, the first meeting is virtual. So we would meet virtually and then a face-to-face with the home provider. First a virtual meeting with the home provider and then a face-to-face with the home provider. Does that?
No, it's fine. So I'm just trying to think about somebody having to fly.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, just once, yeah.
I'd just like to mention one thing. As an old senior, I was young at one time, and I was into computers until I realized this is dangerous, and I got the heck out of it. So I don't have any of those WW Canada HomeShare stuff.
That's
I don't
okay.
have an internet connection to my home. I have fiber optics to my home, but I'm not connected to it. So all these interviews and
Right.
Zooming stuff,
Everything we can
we're
do.
seniors.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily
Everything-
understand that. You guys assume that.
Yeah.
Everything that can be done virtually can be done over the phone. So the phone number is going to be Caitlin. She'll have the interview with you over the phone, then she'll come out to the home. The only thing is to do the application. You would call and Caitlin would ask you the application questions and fill it out on your behalf. But pretty much everything we can do for you.
Yeah. In person, yeah. Or over the phone.
Just mention it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And if the consideration Raza's saying is if you were matched with a student who wanted to get the internet, we would ask that you allow them to pay for their own internet for the home. So you wouldn't be expected to pay, obviously, but you would just allowing the technicians to set it up. Yeah.
I just put, as I say, I had a bad experience.
Yeah.
Never again.
We'll stick with the reliable phone call. Yeah.
But even the phone nowadays is ridiculous.
Well, true. It can be.
9 times out of 10, my phone call is, this is Amazon and you owe us money. We're going to come and arrest you. Come ahead.
The scams.
The duct
Ohio.
Yeah.
Never been to the States. Don't want to be there.
The scams are something to watch out for. That's for sure. Yeah.
To the back.
I just wanted to suggest that if somebody wanted to have access to the internet or support with Zoom, that's available through all the local public libraries in the city and county, as well as contact community care, local office of community care, and can help make those arrangements.
Thank you.
Including filling out, if they want to scan the form back
Great.
to you, we can assist with that as well.
Been there, done that, doesn't work.
All right. Thank you very much, though. Any other questions? Or have we done it? And if you think of one after we leave, you just call Caitlin, and she will get back to you. In the back.
Is the application open already?
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Caitlin, maybe with this student
Yeah.
after we're done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much
Thank
for having us.
you.